Hey everybody. So making a module video part two. So I'll try to be quick here. Sorry about this. So I'm in module two, and this is what it looks like from my end. This is the built-in video player for Blackboard. I think some people had some issues. I think it comes up and says maybe you need to enable third-party cookies, which is just a way of like changing some privacy settings to allow like Blackboard to host on your browser. If you're comfortable doing that, then you should be able to view anything that's hosted here. It depends on your browser. You'll have to just maybe Google it or look it up. There's a way to do it in Safari. There's a way to do it in Chrome, whatever your internet browser happens to be. But I'm recording this and uploading it to YouTube, which should be like accessible to anybody without any issues. So hopefully you're seeing this, even if you couldn't see the original one. The highlights, though, the quick things to talk about. So we are in Module 2, right? We've moved into Module 2. Module 1, if we go back, was all about reading about literacy narratives, talking about your own reading experience. That's what you talked about, your reading history, talking about your communication history, how that's been sort of impacted by maybe the ways in which you learned to read and communicate and develop. All of this is sort of thinking about the different ways that communication has happened for students, the way literacy has happened for different thinkers and readers. So you did your two discussion posts about that, and then of course we had that reading quiz about these narratives. If you did not finish one of these things, you can go back and you still can do these for partial credit at this point. I'm happy to give you partial credit for that. But in the future, just make sure you're keeping up with those dates and those due dates and that sort of thing. So now that we are in Module 2, here is the main thing that we're working towards. We are now moving in the direction of writing our own literacy narratives.
Attention students.
And so part of what this means is, we're thinking about your own literacy narrative, and that's what I'm asking you to do. The main thing, this module, is essay number 1. Your literacy narrative is due at the end of Module 2, which is September 23rd. So that's a little over around 10 days or so, September 23rd. The requirements for this are all listed here. Here are the main resources, the things that are really going to help you with this. So for example, here's the assignment description that tells you what you're doing. You're building off the things that you started, when you read this, when you read the examples by other people. But your ultimate literacy narrative should be 2 to 3 double-spaced pages. That's the goal. 2 to 3 double-spaced pages. We're going to talk about, there's a peer review. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But the main thing to think about for that end goal is this. And you might say, well, I don't know how to get started. Well, there's also a document called the brainstorming points with lots and lots and lots of good questions here. By no means should you expect to have to answer all of these questions in your literacy narrative. There's way more here than you could possibly answer in 2 to 3 pages. But if you're struggling to kind of get started, look through these questions and think about how you would answer them, how you would write about them. It's got everything from, do you hate reading and writing? Is there an experience you had that made you feel this way? You can write a narrative about that. What made you not enjoy this? Or maybe you really love it. You can talk about that. You can talk about a specific person that got you started reading and writing. Maybe it was a parent or a guardian or a teacher, somebody who really inspired you. Maybe you want to talk about your literacy in terms of languages. Maybe you speak lots of languages or multiple languages. How has this impacted you, having to sort of switch between them? Do you have a hobby that requires its own kind of literacy? Maybe like reading and writing isn't your favorite thing, but you've become literate in music. You could talk about that. You could give examples of how that is its own kind of literacy, and how is that connected to or like reading and writing? How is that similar? Those are just some examples. There's a ton here to get you started to think through. to maybe help sort of bounce your ideas off. And then one more thing is, if you're a person who likes to see examples, well, here's an example of a literacy narrative written by a Lindsey Wilson College student. It goes through their own example, and then it ties it to a teacher, particularly a teacher who changed the way the student thought about writing and thought about literacy. So those are all resources. Please check those out, because those will help you think about this essay. The other two things we're focusing on this module before we get to that final draft, the 23rd, is our discussion board post. This is the one that's due this week, due today actually, by the end of the day. But if for some reason you missed this because you couldn't view the video, just get it uploaded as soon as you can. But this is just responding to your views about revision. When it comes to writing, a lot of students don't love revision. They hate the idea of revising an essay. And I just want you to reflect on why. What is it about revision that we hate, or that makes it difficult? Or why do we think it's so difficult, even if sometimes we maybe don't think it is? I don't know. What are some things and thoughts you have about having to revise your work? Your initial post due today, end of the day, and then a response to a classmate by Saturday. The other thing, before we turn in that final draft of your essay, though, I'm asking you to do the first in what will become kind of a regular thing in terms of peer review. So to participate in this peer review, it's a lot like a discussion post. You're going to create a new thread under the peer review for essay 1. But in that thread, you're just going to paste your draft of the essay, whatever you have so far, whatever you're comfortable sharing with somebody else. So it can be part of your draft, it can be a few paragraphs, it can be the whole thing. The more you have, the better feedback you'll get. But I want you to post a draft by the 16th. And so that's by Saturday. That's by this coming Saturday. And then by the 20th, I'm asking you to reply to one other person in like a paragraph or two, giving them some feedback on their essay based on what you've read, based on what you've seen in terms of literacy narratives. What is this one doing well? What is it doing well in terms of the assignment? What's strong about it? And then point out at least one thing it could do differently or do more of. What's a growth area to help it more successfully meet the requirements? Now, we want to remember these are our peers, right? So we want to be kind and constructive and helpful. Don't trash it. Don't say, dude, this introduction is so bad. That helps nobody, right? Respond helpfully. Respond as a reader and say, like, I really love what you did with your example in this particular paragraph, but maybe in this next paragraph, it kind of loses me as a reader. I don't follow it. I'm not sure. I don't see the connection between literacy and the example you're using. That's the kind of thing a reader can find helpful and useful. And if you're stuck or you're not sure how to get started with peer review, I have a link here, a guide to peer review that just gives you some really useful ideas for getting started and going through that. That's the thing. That's what's on deck for this week and next, is just working on your literacy narrative. Discussion board post about revision, that's due this week. Post a draft of your essay, get started, have something to post for your peer review by the 16th, respond to a peer by the 20th, and then your final draft will be due by the 23rd. Email me, please, if you want me to give you some feedback on your draft, or if you want to talk, or if you have questions, email me. We can meet by Google Meet, all that good stuff. I'm so happy to do that. The one thing I can't do is if you don't reach out to me until like the night the essay is due or the night before it's due, I'm not going to have time to give you feedback on that, right? Give me time. This week and this weekend and early next week is the time to be reaching out to me with your questions or asking for meetings or feedback and that kind of thing. Okay, I hope you saw this video. I'm sorry about if there were issues with the other one. This one should be on YouTube and should be accessible to anybody with